Yes.
Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Are we
Can I-
pulling it or totally abstaining?
Is, well, now I'm going to do the consent
Okay.
agenda. Would you, anybody want anything pulled from the consent agenda?
I'll
You
just
don't have to.
abstain from that.
Okay. All right, so can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Anybody?
Aye.
All right.
That's it.
That was it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And one abstain?
And one abstain, okay.
All right, items removed from the consent agenda. We have 3 donations tonight. Donation number 1 is a donation from the, sorry, my computer's a little slow, from New York Life has made a donation of $740. Thank you very much for the person who made this donation. This is going to be a recurrent donation and we greatly appreciate it. The second donation on the agenda is a donation from the Furnace Woods Elementary School PTA for $14,242, and that is to supplement the cost for arts and education and the Ashokan trip. Good job, Furnace Woods, thank you very much. And our third donation tonight is the $650 for the Summer Fun Program and to increase the budget to cover expenses for the Summer Stars Camp. Thank you again for the Summer Fun Program. Can I get a motion to approve the items removed from the consent agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
She said yes to.
Wake up, Mary
I'm
Beth.
Do I need to speak
I'm totally
totally?
awake. I got no.
Okay, so at this point, we have an opportunity for audience comments for the public on non-agenda items. The Hendrick Hudson Board of Education welcomes public comment at this portion of the meeting. Each speaker is permitted 3 minutes for their comments and must be recognized by the board president. All comments must be directed to the board president. The board will listen to comments and input but will not necessarily debate or discuss items. Operational matters will be directed towards administrators as appropriate. The board will not be addressing personnel or individual student matters in open session. And we may limit repetitive comments in order to give time to others wishing to speak, as well as to maintain meeting efficiency. Anybody wishing to speak should have signed up with Roseanne Scolanti before this section of the meeting. And it looks like we don't have any comments tonight, so we can move on to the superintendent's report.
Well, school has officially started for the staff. Today was our first day back, day 1 of 2 consecutive days of professional learning and conference days. New teacher orientation started on Monday, and they had a 2-day orientation experience, learning everything from their curriculum to technology to meeting with their mentors, touring their schools, doing their classroom setup. We welcomed a little more than 14 teachers and a few teaching assistants that are new to the organization. You'll see, if you have passed by our track and field, a great deal of progress in the last, seems like 12 hours, but really about 2 weeks. The turf or the carpet has been laid, and if you walk by during the day, you'll see some guys on their hands and knees, and what they're doing is they're actually stitching part of it together.
Wow.
Because it is not painted. Each color is its own strip of turf. And so what they have to do is they have to line it up, make sure it's centered, and then they have to glue it down, and then also stitch it together. So there's a lot of handiwork that's being done now, and that actually is going to take a little bit, actually, the rest of the week and into the weekend. And then literally dump trucks full of the fill will show up, and they'll drive a dump truck around and spread out the fill, and then they'll bring a machine that looks like a big snow blower, but it has these big furry brushes on them, and they'll go up and down the field to spread it out, and then they have some fancy testing mechanism to make sure that the fill is spread equitably, and they'll go to different parts of the field and drop a ball to make sure that the field responds consistently. It's really scientific for something that seems as simple as, rip out grass and put down some turf. We're still aiming for September 27th competition date. We do believe the field will be done, hopefully it will be done a few days before so teams can practice on it. Our teams are used to playing on turf. We're one of the few schools that don't have a turf field until the end of September, but we wanted to give them some time to play on our own field before they host the game. So once the field is ready for traffic, for foot traffic, we'll have some sort of small ceremony and let the public know about it, that it's ready, but come September 27th, we'll have our first football game, and then we have a slew of home games scheduled really at the end of September and through early October for field hockey and soccer. So it's very, very exciting. One of the concerns, or something that we pause about, is that the track will not be done.
I was going to ask you the same
Yeah,
question.
the,
You might want to hold off.
The process to
Right.
finish the track is much more involved, has just a greater level of specificity that has to take place. Now, the reason we pushed the field part of that project was because we don't have any events that require a track in the fall. That's a spring sport. So the field will be ready, but what we have to determine is how do we make sure we have a secure perimeter, and how do we make sure that we limit access, because we don't need people running around on a track that's not done, or cured is what the official term is, and to make sure that we protect that process while they're finishing it, yet having competition. So it might be one of those situations where that field is just used for games only. We did that before when we had the field.
Really, yeah.
And a communication strategy with the community to let them know that it's not done, and that we have to protect our investment. We talked last spring, or a spring and a half ago, with the policy committee about really studying this upcoming school year, studying our facilities use policy, because we have made a great investment in that track and field. We're going to make a huge investment in the auditoriums at the two schools, and throughout our facilities. And so one way to protect our investment is to limit use for the outside public, or to create a fee structure. So we're not there yet, but that's a conversation that we'll need to have. So while we may see some activity on the field, it doesn't necessarily mean it's open for everyone's use, and that will be a challenge to let the community know that it will be limited use, and it will be used for only school-sanctioned events.
When you anticipate the track being done?
It probably wouldn't be done until mid-October, but there's also no there's no timeline.
3-week window.
Yeah, and there's also there's no rush and no timeline, but you can't get to the field without stomping on the track. So we've talked to our architects about getting some protective padding. Yeah, that will you can lay down like a thick rubber mat or a carpet that you can lay down over sections of the unfinished track, just so players and coaches to get on and off the field. But again, just because the lights are on and people are screaming and the band is playing does not mean it's a finished product. But because of the timeline of when voters approved the project in May of 2018 and going through all the red tape with the state, we wanted to make our focus on that field so we could have our competition teams in the fall experience some of it.
So will the contractors be on standby? Because once the field is open, I'm sure there are going to be imperfections or things that we find as we start to use it.
So there's a punch list process that they go through. So they go through the punch list, and then we provide a report to the state ed called substantial completion, and that makes the money flow. We can't send the state those documents until the contractors go through their punch list and say, okay, these meet codes, these meet specs, they meet the demands of SED. So yes, that's all part of the project, and that's why they won't let anyone play in it until they bring in that third party to test it for playability and for consistency. Yep. So no one will be on it until it's blessed.
Okay.
Yep. And I'll leave it at that. It's been a busy week. We're back at it, and school starts on Tuesday, September 3rd. It's an early start to the school year, right after Labor Day. Next year, I haven't looked at the calendar, but I'm pretty certain it's a late Labor Day.
I think September 7th.
Yeah, September 7th, so when we get into the throes of our calendar making, it might be another one of those school years where we actually have students before Labor Day, and then have Labor Day and come back and continue our school year, and that's to make sure we meet the mandate with all of the different holidays that we observe. So we're off and running, and we're ready to welcome 2,400 kids back on Tuesday. It's an exciting time. Nice to get-
Excellent. Any updates on the safety and security upgrades, just to kind of let people know and let us know where we're at?
Yeah, so we're going to revisit, those plans are done, they've been submitted to the state. We're going to revisit that bid along with the rest of Phase 2. Phase 2 includes all of the renovations at the auditorium at the middle school and high school, some science classroom renovations, some other general space renovations, HVAC, lighting, doors, windows, some of those mundane improvements that we have to make, and we're going to combine that bid to go out as soon as we can to try to be more competitive in the market. Where we got stuck last spring was trying to fast track that piece through too, that we had a very, very small window from when the time state had approved the plan and when we needed to start, when we needed to break ground in order to get things done for September 3rd, that we were not in the best competitive spot to do that within the budget, or really, not even within the budget, in a remotely responsible financial way. So that part is done and ready to go, but we want to connect it to the rest of Phase 2 so that it's a big project so contractors can say, okay, this is worth my while. A $400,000 project at Furnace Woods isn't as great as a $2 million project that I may bid on. So all of the input we receive from our consultants is that the bigger the project, the larger number of corporations you'll have bidding on it, and then you'll have more competitive prices. Also, a lot of districts had construction projects over the last 2 years. If you remember, we did our building condition survey in 2015, and we're doing the project now in 2019-2020. Back in 2015, other districts were just a little quicker in turnaround from receiving their building condition survey to putting a project together to going to bid and breaking ground. So we also had an issue with labor. And when you have a tight labor market, wages go up, and what we budgeted or what we thought we could, what we thought a budget would be 12 months ago, to be honest, is not what it was at that time because of the labor market.
Does Phase 2 include the reconfiguration of the entrances?
Yeah, that's actually the safety and security part. We tried to
That's what I was.
broke ground.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I
So
was listening for.
yeah, so that will be it'll be the 5 school main foyer renovations, plus the work at plus all the other work at the 5 schools, but the other big ticket items are the large spaces, the auditoriums, libraries, and large group instruction spaces.
Do we have an anticipated time for that to go out to bid again for the complete thing, or?
You can move this way.
We don't yet because we're still finishing the design of Phase 2 and getting that to the state. So once we get Phase 2, which is all the other stuff in the 5 schools plus the auditoriums and a couple other areas, then we'll be able to say, okay, here's what's approved for us to do and use the construction money on. So hopefully in the fall, but definitely in the winter. Yeah. And it's actually one of our advantages because many of the other schools are wrapping up their school projects. So those companies or those subcontractors are usually the ones who are doing most of the work. They specialize in school instruction or industrial work that they'll become available and will hopefully bid on the project.
I have a question too. You know how we're doing, are all of our doors and locks done? Is that some of our stuff too? I forgot.
It's funny, it's in process because I showed up upstairs and tried to key into the door and couldn't. And I'm looking at it like, okay, this was changed. And
Right.
texted Anthony, said, yep, we just finished district office.
So my question is, just like computers, like one day they're obsolete, new ones. So now they have new door locks too, so it's too late. They lock from the inside or something like that, like
The
it-
classrooms,
classrooms.
doors? Some, yeah.
So do we, I'm
That's
just
pa-
saying,
that's in the- yeah,
I'm just
that's in
saying
the
as
project.
technology updates, are we also looking at
Oh, yeah,
that?
that's in the project. The other thing that we've put outside the main doors, especially for single point of entry, is we had the little buzzer. You put this up to like the fob
Yeah,
thing.
so we,
We've also added a 10-digit keypad. So if you don't have your doohickey here, you're assigned a code or you create a code, you can still buzz in. So it's not only if you have your badge, if you have your ID, but your secret ID number as well. In the classrooms, in that phase 2 part of the project are the improvements to doors and windows both inside and outside.
we just want to make sure we're keeping up with the
Yep.
latest, because I know we worked on this 2 years ago, and now like things
Right.
are different.
Yeah, and there's technology available, not just within the door, but
Right.
the technology hardware where a principal can, have an app on their phone and type in a secret code and will trigger a lockdown to all the internal doors. So
Right.
if a door is open, it will trip the magnet, it will close it, it will lock it on its own, so teachers don't have to wait for an email or hear the secret word on the announcement, it will just happen.
Are we doing that?
Yep.
Okay. Are we doing that? Good, good.
Yep. And the other piece is our continued push for single point of entry. To make sure, and Corey and I shared an email earlier today about high school parking, that, a parking spot that may be off the high school campus is actually closer to the single point of entry. Because that's the only way to account for who's coming and going. Some of our security cameras have been installed. For example, I won't give it all away, but we have a number of security cameras on the outside of the high school in Frank G to make sure our investment up there is well protected. And there's a great deal of technology involved that you can zoom in to do facial recognition and
Because we always hear, we couldn't really see the camera.
facial recognition, as well as license plates from up to 500 yards away.
Awesome.
You can trigger an alarm system to decipher between whether a human being is on the field or an animal. Really unique stuff. So,
Cool.
and all of those things are going digital, where you get an alarm or a warning sent to your phone, and you can respond remotely in terms of call law enforcement or not. We're also having conversations with Peekskill, City Police Department, the county, the state police, and Buchanan to give them access as well to some of our security data. So if something happens on off hours, and something on my phone or Jim Atkins' phone will show up at 3 in the morning, it will also show up to the barracks, and law enforcement can respond as well.
Cool.
So quick question on that. So we're capturing facial recognition data, and the kids are going to be playing on the field. We'll be capturing biometric information on the children and students. How are we protecting that information, and how are we making sure that we're complying with all laws related to that?
Well, we can trigger, we can control when the external cameras are zooming where. So for example, if the end of the varsity football game is at 10 o'clock, we can trigger from 10 a.m. to 6 a.m. because I think the track has historically been open at 6 a.m. for public use. So we can control the settings of, while the cameras may be on and recording, we may shut off some of those features because, or turn on some of those features because we don't want to inadvertently collect data that either we shouldn't or that we basically just don't need to take up space on the server.
And who's going to be responsible for that?
John Anderson has our director of security, has his basically war room of screens and surveillance, and we've also worked with Southern Westchester BOCES and their the RIC, the Regional Information Center, on the purchase of equipment, the training, the tech support, all of those things.
And he'll be he'll be instructed on the laws and regulations
Oh, yeah.
related to, non-adult privacy.
Yeah, and that actually, that process starts with the vendor. So the vendor can't be on state contract unless they themselves and their technology complies.
Okay.
So we talk a lot about state contract, but ordering efficiently, not having to go out to bid on certain things because they're pre-approved on state contract. Those are some of the requirements. They have to already pre-meet state ed requirements. So that responsibility isn't always only on the district. It's been pre-vetted.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks.
You mentioned Peekskill Police. What are they back up to as a neighboring
Yep.
entity?
Yep. Yeah, they have I don't know if it's formal or not, but they have an intermunicipality arrangement with those other law enforcement agencies. There's a, what do they call it? Incident command, chain of command, that when the local municipal law enforcement agency shows up, they're in charge, but if Peekskill is first to respond or is closest to respond to an incident at a school, they have that jurisdiction for that period of time. Okay.
Okay, we're gonna skip committee reports since I don't think there have been any committees meeting over the summer yet. Fall is coming very soon. There's another segment for audience comments. We don't seem to have any audience members here tonight, so I'm going to pass that as well. Which brings us to board comments. Does anybody have anything else that they would like to share? All right, so I think we can end the public portion of the meeting and move to the executive session. If someone would like to make a motion to do so. Yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Our next meeting will be September
11.
11th, September 11th.